Welcome back. And thanks for tuning in to Super Simple Security Principles, part of the IHP Academy. This is episode 6. It's got a boring title. I'm going to tell you that. It's called Communication Plans, but realistically, we need to enhance your communication plans. I'm Nick. I'm super excited today because guess what? We're also building upon what we talked about at episodes 4 and episode 5. So make sure you check out Protection Partners and Sabotaging Your Friends because we're going to be building upon this. So that said, I'm excited. We're leveling up today. How about that, McConaughey? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for that introduction. High bar after episode 5, I suppose.
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that.
I'm still a little bit nervous today, but I actually think I can genuinely say I'm a bit excited today as well because here's why. Originally, episode 4 was going to be today's topic, but it turned out it was too big for a single episode. So first I split it into 2 episodes and then into 3. And so it's just kind of awesome now to add the final piece today, bring it all together so our listeners can make plans. And even though that's kind of boring in a way, I'm excited because it will give them some good protection against communication-based attacks. And here's the layer we're going to be adding today. We've talked before about listening to your Spidey sense, that gut feeling that something might be wrong. And what we want to do today is add a layer of protection for when your Spidey sense fails you. Or in other words, when something is actually wrong, but your Spidey sense is not tingling like it should be. And that layer I call two-factor communication, or 2FC.
I'm pumped because we're leveling up our security today. So that said, plans may sound a little boring, but here's the reality. We all have emergency plans, whether it's a fire escape drills that we've done in the past. We all have these plans that we need to make in case there's an emergency. So I love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. That's a good way to think about it. Before we dive into our 3 examples, I want to briefly introduce the principle itself. Now, in 2FC, the two-factor part is simply the idea of doing a double check that whoever you're communicating with is truly who they claim to be. And again, going back to plans, the key to using it is making those plans so that you know ahead of time when you want to do that double check. When do you want to be really sure that you know who you're talking to? And we're going to do 3 examples, and these are all ones that are actually happening in the world right now, where people are falling into communication traps, but they could easily stay safe simply by adding a double check, or in other words, by using 2FC.
Outstanding. Love it. Thank you. So let's get into some examples. What do you have for us?
First example is, let's say you receive an email telling you there is a problem with a service or account you have. Perhaps there's an issue with your payment on your Netflix subscription. Now, the risk here is that email might not actually be from Netflix. And if it's not, and you click on the link in that email, then you'll go to a website that looks just like the real Netflix website to you, but is in fact owned by the hackers. And so when you enter your credit card number, you're giving it your credit card number to the hackers, not Netflix. And this is called a phishing attack. And attacks like this in 1,000 different varieties are happening all the time. And like many of these attacks, the key is email. It is so easy for a hacker to send you an email that looks like it comes from Netflix. And this is kind of one of my soapboxes because just like passwords, email does a terrible job at keeping us safe. Here's a good rule for our listeners. If you receive an email that there is a problem with some account you have, don't trust the link in that email. Instead, do a very simple double check that the email is real by instead opening up a browser, going to the website where you have that account. Now, here's the thing to remember. If the email was legitimate, clicking on the link wouldn't have been a problem And so it might feel pointless, but it's safer not to trust that email. It only takes a few extra seconds to skip that link.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know for me, I've actually, it wasn't exactly this case, but it was very, very similar. I got a text message saying, hey, there was a problem with your package. I went to the link that was sent to me. I started filling it out and I realized this isn't legitimate.
Makes sense. Thanks, Nick. All right. So the second example, you receive a phone call from someone claiming to be from your bank. Maybe they'll telling you that there's some charges that look fraudulent and they just want to check with you if they are or not. Now, again, just like with all these, the risk here is that it might not actually be someone from your bank, and you could end up sharing details about your bank account, about your identity that lets someone else access your bank account. And here's the question: how will you know if it's really someone from your bank? Can you do that by looking at the phone number that shows up when someone calls you? Unfortunately, just like email, it's not that hard to fake the phone number that shows up there. One possible answer is to double check that it's really your bank by just hanging up and calling the number that you know belongs to your bank. But unlike skipping the link, this is a lot of extra work. You're navigating phone trees, waiting on hold. So is there an alternative? Well, for this exact scenario, let's say they share all the details of those fraudulent transactions. And all you have to do is say, yep, those were me, or nope, you're right, they are fraudulent. And if that's all that happens, then that's fine. There's no problem because you didn't give them any personal information. There's no way for them to take advantage of you. But here's where a problem happens. Sometimes banks want to verify who you are, just like you want to verify who they are. And unfortunately, the types of questions they ask you sometimes can feel pretty much the same as the ones the scammers would ask. So it can be tricky. And my advice is, if there's any question in your mind, if your spidey sense is tingling even the tiniest bit, then hang up and call the known number for your bank, despite the hassle that you know it's going to be.
I know it's an extra step, but this seems like a necessary extra step. We want to make sure we keep our banking account safe. So thank you. I think this is a great example.
All right, third example, you are buying a house. The risk here that we're going to look at is that you end up sending the payment for that house to a hacker. And the details of how this happens varies, but generally involves the hacker sending an email to the buyer with new instructions on where to send the money. Whether you're the buyer in this case, or a realtor representing a buyer, or a title company facilitating the transaction, this is a scam that everyone needs to be aware of. Because just like the other two, this is happening in the world and it hurts. Now, thankfully, the solution is pretty simple. Don't trust email. Always double check with a phone call or in-person communication or anything related to sending money. And make sure that all parties involved know ahead of time that this is the plan. The use of email, it might be unavoidable, but it should always be double checked.
Outstanding. Look, this is why 2FC is so important. I'm going to share a story with you. This is a story from a friend. I'm going to try to share as close as I can his words. He knew of an agent whose email was hacked. And according to him, he thinks it's pretty commonplace. But in this case, the hacker started communicating directly with the buyer as if they were the agent themselves. Buyer didn't know any different. The hacker then falsely let the buyer know that the wiring information had changed, and the buyer lost over $350,000 because they sent the money to the wrong account. It was awful. Look, there are certain times where we really need to level up our security. And these are some great examples of when to level up beforehand, before it's too late. Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that story, Nick. That hurts so much, especially knowing that the solution to it is really so simple.
Absolutely. Had they just picked up the phone, called to verify that their wiring information had changed, they could have avoided it. Had they used two-factor communication, it would have saved them $350,000. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, so to recap, because we live in a world of instant communication, there's communications everywhere. There's a chance that our communication could be fake. And because there's a chance that our communication could be fake, we're going to make plans for certain times in our life to where we need a little extra security.
Thanks, Nick. Yep. And the specific call to action today is to pick one way that you're going to use 2FC. It could be one of our examples or some other risk you identify where you want to double check. Either way, make that plan. Write down when you will use it and what your double check will look like. Then share it with your protection partner so they can benefit from it and support you.
Okay, guys, that's our show today. We've got a link for you that we would love to have you click on it. It takes you to our website there at IHP Academy. And just remember, by listening, by tuning in, you're taking your security a little more seriously and you're leveling up with us. Have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.